Great.
Hello.
So I think we're ready to begin the program. So welcome, everyone. My name is Ivan Barrios, and I'm President and CEO of the World Trade Center Miami. We are very proud to present our International Women's Day follow-up event. It's called World Vision, Trade and Results webinar, honored with our 5 featured honorees from the who have received the International Achievement Award this year. This year, our International Women's Day Committee is headed up by Beth Sobel, and Beth will be your moderator today. Beth is the founder of the Global Business Fashion Alliance, or is it the Global Fashion Business Alliance? Sorry about that, Beth. And Beth was also better known as, at least the way I met her, was she was the founder of the Miami Fashion Week, which created a platform for young designers to become, she created a platform for young designers to enter the market. So Beth, I'm going to leave it up to you. You're going to be a great moderator, and thank you for co-organizing this session.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you all. Good morning and welcome to World Trade Vision and Results webinar. We're featuring the World Trade Center Miami's 2021 International Women's Day honorees. And as Ivan said, I'm Beth Sobel. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Fashion Business Alliance and the chair of the World Trade Center Miami's International Women's Day Committee. For the past 18 years, the World Trade Center Miami has honored Miami's women business leaders at a luncheon held in their honor on March 8th, which is International Women's Day. This year's event was held virtually, and on March 8th, 2021, the World Trade Center Miami honored the following 5 leading women executives, who I am pleased to introduce to you again today. Dr. Susan Amat, the founder and CEO of Venture Hive. Susan is an internationally renowned expert in entrepreneurship and innovation education. She has worked with the U.S. State Department, the Kauffman Foundation, and the World Bank on program development, training, and evaluation. In 2012, Dr. Amat was honored as a champion of change at the White House in Washington, D.C. Elena Asturdiz. She's the owner of 305 Cargo Services. Elena is a licensed United States customs broker and certified customs specialist. She has been involved with imports and logistics for over 18 years and established and managed warehouse projects for clients who distribute to several major U.S. retailers. Her expertise includes the development of departments for quality control, order fulfillment, and implementing systems which ensure vendor compliance. Stephanie Jones, founder and CEO of the Cultural Heritage Economic Alliance. Stephanie is the founder of some of the most innovative tourism initiatives designed to create diversity, equity, and inclusion in the travel and tourism industry. These include such initiatives as Culture on Shore, the world's first global marketplace for cultural heritage tours and activities, and the National Blacks in Travel and Tourism Collaborative, an initiative that levels the playing field for small Black and Brown travel and tourism businesses. Carolina Rendeiro. She's the Honorary Consul of Portugal in Miami and CEO of Global 2 Connect. Carolina is an active member in Miami's international business community with a career spanning 34 years. Not only is she the Honorary Consul of Portugal in Miami, she is also the CEO of Global 2 Connect, a company that she created, merging both her passion for strong community involvement and the importance of creating synergy between businesses, their communities, and entrepreneurship. And we have Deborah Stern, Customs and Trade Attorney at Sandler, Travis & Rosenberg. Deborah is well known for advising domestic and multinational clients on both U.S. and foreign customs compliance and other trade matters. She concentrates her practice in traditional customs areas, such as tariff classification, seizures and penalties, country of origin marking, valuation, trademark infringement, broker compliance, bonded warehouses, government procurement, trade preference programs, and free trade agreements, as well as the World Customs Organization's harmonized system. Well, ladies, that's quite an impressive group, and thank you all for participating in today's webinar. Before we begin the program, I would also like to introduce Susan Harper. She's the Consul General of Canada, who has so graciously supported this program today. Susan, welcome.
Thank you very much. Bonjour à tout le monde. It's a pleasure for the Consulate General of Canada to support today's event, featuring 5 women in Miami who've made major contributions to international trade in their own organizations and in their communities. In fact, we support the World Trade Center of Miami's International Women's Day event every year. Unfortunately for all of us, this year we weren't able to participate in the lunch with hundreds of others to celebrate the day and the award winners. But we're certainly looking forward already to next year's opportunity to get together with friends and colleagues. In fact, last year we had the opportunity for an FIU student in the CEO for a Day program to join us. And I hope next year we'll also be able to see more young women join our lunch in a mentorship program. So why does the World Trade Center of Miami hold this event? Three main reasons. First, international trade is important to Miami and to Florida. 1 in 5 jobs in Florida depends on international trade. 1 in 5. And trade includes many kinds of business. For example, if you sell a service like tourism to a foreigner, that's international trade, even if you're both in Florida. And as you probably know, every year, even if a bit fewer this COVID year, you see a lot of Canadians here doing tourism trade with Florida. Second, Miami is the gateway to the Americas, to Central America, to South America, to the Caribbean, and north to Canada. This is an exceptional role and opportunity for those of us who live and work here. Of course, it's more challenging this year with COVID for people to travel, but on the good side, business is booming because Miami is the gateway. Third, one of the strengths of Miami is its diversity. Its many communities provide natural links to other communities around the world. And I know because we at the Consulate General work with many of these communities. And we believe it's important to celebrate that diversity in all its forms. Personally, I've worked in international trade for many years, and it used to be rare to see women working in trade. Fortunately, it is no longer. However, in that context, we do like to celebrate women working in trade. Charlotte Googly, the CEO of World Trade Center Miami for many years, started this annual tradition 18 years ago. The World Trade Center of Miami continues to celebrate the accomplishments of exceptional women in world trade. And Canada, as one of Florida's most important partners in international trade, is pleased to support this event. I hope you'll enjoy it.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you again for your support. It's very important to have this, and we do appreciate it. Now let's get to some questions for our panel. We have such a wonderful panel here, and this question is going to everyone. So how has the pandemic influenced changes in your own company since the world shut down, and now again as we reopen? Who would like to take this first? There you go, Carolina.
I just started off, right? So first, thank you to all of you that are here, and congratulations to my fellow panelists. I really enjoyed being in this whole group of women. But pivoting, I mean, that was, I guess, the key word for this year was how we all pivoted, right? And I went from having, 9 major consulting clients to 0 overnight. Okay, so you'd say, where do we go next with this, right? So pick up your bootstraps one more time, right? And just kind of look and see what is happening, okay? We saw everything pivoting into online, to Zoom. And so I started converting some of my business to that, where I was doing consulting online opposed to having to go, because we couldn't travel at the time, anywhere to visit with the client. It's kind of hard on the international sector, which is who I deal with most. But I think globally, we were thrown into this pot together. It was like a really great stew of everybody being in the same pot, and that we all joined forces in pivoting, correctly with it. I've seen now that, my clients are coming back, people are starting to feel more comfortable. And I think that the message I want to get out to everybody is, we were all in this together, which I know it sounds lame, but we were. But I also feel that we can be very original, and it's a great time to take your company to the next level you were thinking about doing in a couple of years. We fast forwarded it into this one pandemic year that we had. So make the best of it. That's how I look at it.
I'll go next. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to agree with Carolina. Same here. one of my businesses, I am a tour operator in South Florida. So of course, when the pandemic hit, we had to cease operations completely. And we are just now gearing up to resume tours in July of this year. So for over a year, we weren't generating any revenue, and I had to lay off some of my tour guides. But as Carolina mentioned, what I did is I was able to use that downtime with the tour business and really pivot back into my core area of expertise, which is business development, nonprofit work. And I launched the National Blacks in Travel and Tourism Collaborative, because not only did I want to help reposition my business to resume as the industry is now recovering, I also wanted to help other small Black tour operators and businesses around the country do the same by creating opportunities that will best position them to be able to attract tourist foot traffic and dollars, but also to help them enhance their businesses so that they can create sustainable businesses that can possibly endure a hurricane or a pandemic. So same with Carolina, this pandemic has really allowed me to amplify my work and to scale it both nationally and globally.
Excellent. Who's next?
Yeah, I'll go.
Elena.
Yeah, for those in trade, right. I mean, I would say that my experience was certainly reflective of the brokerage industry's experience, right? Where overnight we're dealing with the cancellations of air and ocean shipments. And so then we all immediately, right, to Carolina's point of pivoting, we all had to pivot to handle the clearance of PPE shipments. So all of a sudden we're becoming, experts in the clearance of masks and gloves and that type of equipment, which a lot of brokers hadn't handled before. So within a matter of days, right, our industry is upended. And I think the other thing that we had to figure out that was challenging was, since we work with so many regulatory agencies, right, how to work with them in an electronic environment. But I think that now, as normal operations are increasing, we've realized that we can take advantage of that remote work environment for members of our staff that want to work that way. But it's also sort of improved the process with some of these agencies that we work with, right? Maybe they would eventually have gotten to this point, but it definitely accelerated things. So I think, by honestly embracing that electronic environment that we have now for a lot of our clearances and that transactional process, it's allowed us to improve.
Excellent. Dr. Amat.
Thanks, Beth, and thank you to all of you. We're also happy to be here, and I love all of the wonderful women on this screen with me, and many of them have been inspirations to me for a long time, so this is especially special today. When we first started hearing about COVID, I was actually in Central Asia for 2 weeks a month, and my normal travel schedule was 2 to 3.5 weeks a month away from my family. So I kind of pulled my whole team that was in Central Asia with me in different parts of the region. We all came home, and what we were very lucky with was the fact that for 7 years, I've been literally harassing people, including people on this call, about doing virtual and hybrid programs and educations and training. And so instead of me being on the other side of the world having meetings, my team and I have been doing virtual really comfortably as our foundation for years. So this actually gave us a great opportunity to not have the chaos of the travel schedules we all had as we went and trained people on how to do virtual, but did it virtually. And I think especially over the last year, because this is now so prevalent in every aspect of our lives, and people are just more accustomed and feel safer, and it's just so much efficient, as Elena was saying. I think that kind of downtime allowed us all to reprioritize. For our business, we've had a lot of continued success in making sure that the movement towards scaling through virtual and hybrid has been there. And I think just helping people make that transition and including make it earlier in their businesses and having it be more pervasive across their entire organization instead of an offering has been really moving the entire needle forward, not just for companies growing and doing international trade, but for different levels of team members being able to be engaged in training and being part of these dialogues. Whereas before, when it was live training or consulting, it's a smaller group involved in the decision making. Now you can actually open it up to entire organizations, the entire startup team, instead of just the CEO or one other team member. And so it's really created a very different sense of inclusiveness for the educational piece and definitely for the conversations to happen. So I think overall it's been very, very positive for both education and trade.
Deb.
Last but not least, I'm going to take a slightly different path. I agree with our esteemed colleagues about pivoting, rebuilding, retraining, retooling. That's, we all had to do that in so many ways. And, I had a different type of experience, more similar to Elena's, but our work didn't slow because every company was looking to, how do I mitigate the impact of this? I've been working on mitigating the impact of the China tariffs, all the other trade remedies, and that's a lot of what we do. But now it was, how do I mitigate this? How do I shave costs without letting all my staff go? How do I handle the delays in supply chain? How do I equip everyone with PPE when there are regulatory controls on even getting it in? But doing this all from home with 2 small children, which I know Elena knows about as well, was particularly challenging. And so my form of rebuilding, retraining, retooling was, how do I manage with a 2-year-old running around behind me and a 7-year-old who can't pay attention on a Zoom class because he's 7, and constantly going, Mom, Mom, Mom. Fortunately, I had a wonderful support system in my husband, who his work slowed down more, so he was able to do a lot. But I think for me, it was, how many balls can I really keep in the air? And I found myself both personally and professionally challenged by an influx of work, as well as those additional challenges of having my kids at home and just being on this. Ultimately, I ended up on like a 24-hour clock where I was only hours here and there and kind of working in between. And I mean, just we do what we need to do to get through. I think that the key thing here is I was able to actually better foster relationships with my colleagues and my clients in a way that we never really needed to before, because I constantly had to be like, sorry, I've got someone on my lap, I hope that's okay. Or sorry, I've got to reschedule our meeting because somebody just, did something next to me that I won't, share. But I found that, all of my clients, all of my colleagues, everybody, we were on the same boat. And everybody was really accommodating. And so it became the Zoom meeting. First of all, face-to-face Zoom meetings was more, I did conference calls all the time. Now it was really like, let's see each other. We really need interaction. And I think that really brought everyone closer together. In addition, having to share my personal life in order to make those accommodations. Everyone else did too. And we all kind of commiserated for the first 3 to 5 minutes of a conference call on how are you dealing with the pandemic. And so I do think that those relationships have gotten stronger and allowed for, more productive work environments in many respects, even though it felt more challenging.
Wow, it touched all of us. And I'll just throw a little piece in there on the fashion industry. This forced us to leap 10 years into the future. It was much needed. The industry was broken in so many ways, and this has really forced, my industry into futuristic things that we didn't expect. But everybody is coming along and jumping on board with the technology that's all there for us to engage with now. So let's continue. Okay. Our next question is for Stephanie Jones. Now, Stephanie, I understand you have a limited time with us today, so I'd like to ask you a couple of questions while we still have you with us. Okay?
Sure.
So thank you. So from your perspective, how has the pandemic impacted the global travel industry?
Wow. Well, unlike many industries, well, actually, like many industries, but I think even more so for travel and tourism, the industry has really been turned upside down by the pandemic because we all know that travel had to cease, and it ceased for a period of time, and it still is not fully operational across the board. So across the board, from employees to airlines to hotels to restaurants, the industry has really been impacted severely. And it's going to take several years to be able to rebound back to the numbers that the industry was seeing in 2019. Now, I have the pleasure of serving on the U.S. Travel and Tourism Advisory Board. And I recognize that many people do not understand and know that travel and tourism is managed by the U.S. Department of Commerce under the International Trade Administration. Also, the National Travel and Tourism Office operates under this federal agency. So I just wanted to share that because I know a lot of people are not aware of exactly where travel and tourism is managed on a federal level. But what I would like to do is just to really share a broad perspective of how the industry has been impacted by the pandemic by sharing some data. That again, I think will be insightful, but also maybe surprising to a lot of people who may not be that familiar with travel and tourism. So according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, the travel and tourism sector has suffered a loss of almost $4.7 trillion in 2020 alone, okay? Also, in 2020, 62 million jobs were lost, which represented a drop in about 18.5%, leaving just 272 million employed across the sector globally compared to 334 million in 2019. Also, domestic visitor spending decreased by 45%, while international visitor spending declined by an unprecedented 69.4%. So those numbers are a telling story about how the global pandemic has impacted the global tourism industry, and again, signaling that it's going to take time for the industry to rebound and recover, to resume and the type of travel that and record-breaking travel numbers that they were experiencing in 2019.
Interesting. You know, and many people think travel and tourism does not play a role in international trade, and yet others do. What role do you feel travel and tourism plays in international trade?
Sure. Well, again, according to the International Trade Association, the travel and tourism industry generated about $1.9 trillion in economic output. It supported 9.5 million American jobs, accounting for 2.9% of the US GDP in 2019 alone, which is more than the agricultural sector, mining, as well as the utility sector. Also in 2019, international visitors spent roughly $233.5 billion to travel to the US to experience the US, injecting about $640 million a day into the US economy. Now these exports, and Susan, when she made her introduction, she actually mentioned, how tourism, the role tourism plays in international trade, because the millions of people, inbound travelers that come to the US, they are exports because they are bringing billion and depositing trillions of dollars into the US economy, okay? And also about 14.5% of international travel spending globally, international travelers, they spend more in the US than any other country. So when you look at it, travelers, are actually exports into the US. And when they travel to the US, again, they are depositing billions of dollars into products and services. And the industry, has to hire millions of employees to actually take care of those travelers who are exports. And also those travelers, when they come to the US, many of them then export products back to their countries. So there is a direct correlation to tourism and international trade.
Very interesting perspective. That was excellent. Thank you, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have a question for Susan Amat. Susan, how do you see the global movement towards diversity and inclusion within corporations playing out in your industry? And what are your personal experiences?
Well, before Stephanie has to leave us, I loved your comments. I think that the other piece of that is also, as travelers come and visit all over the world, that's how they realize business relationships, setting up new offices in new locations. My husband and I went on vacation and ended up buying a house because we loved that place so much. So that's like our second home now. That happens all the time. If you look on Brickell, how many of the people actually live in those condos to this day?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're foreign investors purchasing. So it really is setting such an important impact, not just on our community. So Stephanie, I wonderful, wonderful data. So Beth, now I will promptly answer your question. Diversity and inclusion has been such an interesting topic. We live in South Florida. I, growing up here, was the only gringa in my classes. And I think we are just so blessed with having diversity be a natural piece of our everyday. I hear more Spanish walking down the street, and French and German and Russian. And it's just such a special place to be when you know that the world and all of the perspectives are coming so naturally and organically surrounding your experience being here. The challenge, I think, for everywhere else in the world is understanding what incredible strengths diversity and the concepts around inclusion actually mean towards building businesses, building new products, marketing, etc. There's incredible data on, and I don't have an amazing list like Stephanie had, but there's incredible data on the value of diversity on corporate boards. Even having women on teams, building new products, ends up having the products sometimes realize revenue and growth up to 50 to 75% higher than those that only had males or less diverse groups in that product development cycle. The corporate board data, as I mentioned, is the same. Women on boards, women involved in marketing, product development, and not just women. And I think this is a really key point I'd like to make. Usually when people think about diversity, it's very simple. And for many years, it's been about women. And now, beautifully, the conversation has expanded to Black and brown and the spectrum of shades. But you also have to get into the diversity pieces of age and ability. We've actually had the incredible pleasure of working with entrepreneurs who have hearing and one who's deaf and different challenges of mobility that have made not only technology businesses, we've had to revamp our entire website and some of the application accessibility to make sure that people who have hearing or vision issues, I mean, I'm in pretty good shape overall, but the text on the font size on some of these apps, I feel like I may as well be 105 years old. And I wear glasses already. So this is really about understanding all of the different pieces to bring perspective and have some of those critical conversations early in building a business, in building new products, in marketing to people, not just for tourism, but every aspect of your customer base, so that you're dealing with things before somebody who wants to be a customer calls and says, hey, I can't see the font on your app, so I can't buy from you. Or worse yet, they just go without and don't have their problem solved because no one brought it up. So having this diversity, does it make things harder? For sure, because not everybody's nodding along with everything you say and telling you how great you are. They're asking tough questions. They're making it more challenging to get the product done or the marketing campaign done and getting everything addressed. But then you end up with a better product that serves more people, because that's what we're all in business for, right? It's serving a customer. And if we're not understanding the nuances of what that customer's needs are, because we're looking at them through a gender lens or an ethnic lens, we're really losing out on the ability to really create something that solves the needs of all of our customers. Did that actually answer your question, Beth?
I think it does, in an in-depth way. So thank you, Susan. Our next question is for Elena Asturdias.
Okay.
Has being an entrepreneur helped you in any specific way through the past year?
Oh my gosh, yes, right? I would say absolutely, right? I mean, when you're starting your own business, especially if you're wearing all the different hats at the beginning, you've got to be both versatile and resilient, right? Having your own business, sometimes it's definitely a case of feast or famine. So you've got to be able to handle the workload when you're busy and scale up. But if things slow down, you've got to have the tenacity to keep going, which can be really hard. You've got to be able to sometimes adapt your business quickly. I think that the past year has certainly shown us that. So I think that the traits that we often associate with entrepreneurship, right, especially I would say that resiliency, right, have personally been really helpful to me. When things are really challenging, like you understand that you need to maintain your focus, right, and being able to continue to move forward. Even if it, breaking it up into manageable pieces, I say, right? Or even if it's just a baby step forward, understanding that that's an important part of succeeding. So yeah, I think that's been pretty helpful, in that process of pivoting and adaptation that we've talked about.
Excellent. It's the mindset of an entrepreneur. Nobody's going to do it but you.
That's right. That's right.
Like you said, feast or famine. But great answer. Thank you so much. And Carolina, next question is for you. In your role as the Honorary Consul of Portugal in Miami, you know the importance of travel and tourism play in the country's economy. Travel and tourism has been tremendously affected by COVID. How do you feel countries are preparing to make up for that lost revenue? And what are they planning to do?
Well, that's the $1 million question, okay? I get asked daily of people that want to travel there, okay? But I, being over here now in Europe and seeing what's going on in Portugal, they are trying to pull all the stops, but they also want to make sure that the population's safe. We're, in Europe, no one has been as fortunate as we have been in the United States in being vaccinated in some of these countries. So we have a very low percentage yet, for example, in Portugal, of people that have been vaccinated. And that's a big issue because, as everybody's been telling us, that even if you're vaccinated, you can transmit it to somebody that doesn't have it because you're asymptomatic pretty much now, right? So those are some of the concerns. But we also are seeing, when you say that, you give that message, you're also hearing the other messages. We need to open up. We need to get business back going. We need to have tourism in here, and we need to get, everybody up and running. We had some areas of Portugal that are still reconsidering shutting down, okay, certain sections of certain cities because there's another, increase. And I'm speaking only for Portugal, but you'll see it throughout, Italy. We had a conversation with the consul of Italy a couple of weeks ago in Miami, and he was saying that, they have 3 zones yet that are still in very orange and cautious, they go by a color scheme. So I think the EU is trying their darnest to get this right, okay? They're looking to everyone around the world. I think they're doing a good job at it. I also feel though that, I'm one that, yes, let's try to control it as you come in, but I've been to restaurants here already. Masks are mandatory. You see people with masks on. The only ones where, that I have seen around are, the college kids that, I think it happens all around the world, but, the police are cracking down on it. And like, for example, in Portugal, the police are cracking down on it. So I think that's important that the government has taken action on, on the mandate of the masks, okay? We will see this opening up. I mean, we have the rumblings happening. It may be some of the rumblings we've heard, might be July, people vaccinated being able to come in. But all that is, still up in the air. We still have to have PCR tests. I was vaccinated. I have a Portuguese passport and I had to get a PCR test, okay? On the way back, I have to get a PCR test because US will not allow us to come in without it, US citizens or foreign citizens. So I think as the governments are starting to work together, we're starting to see more opportunities for things to open up. And I think that's going to be the key, especially Europe and even us in the United States for tourism. These are our crucial months in order to build up our reserves again, especially for the beach towns and everything like that.
Tell you, it's all about opening business again.
Yep.
Okay, and our next question is for Deborah Stern. Deb, you work at Sandler Travis and Rosenberg, one of the country's top international trade law firms. How does the new administration's shift in trade policy priorities affect businesses in South Florida?
Thanks so much, Beth. I think that the trade policy of the current administration really is affecting everywhere in the country almost equally. There's supply chain delays that have remained from the pandemic and from the recent blockage in the Suez Canal. As anyone who maybe has ordered a home appliance in the last year can attest to, I'm still waiting actually on a couple of pieces of my own. So there's all sorts of delays, and trade policies aren't necessarily going to correct those by themselves, but trade has not been one of this administration's top priorities. The first 100 days was not, trade was not one of those first kind of top 6 or 7 issues, but it's getting attention now. The China tariffs and other measures imposed by the last administration continue to be a challenge for all businesses to navigate, but there are pending legislative efforts, for example, to renew the China 301 exclusions, which allow for a break in those duties for certain goods, and to commence a new request process. As of now, for those who are following that, it's going to be limited, I think, to those that expired at the end of last year, if it does go through. Additionally, the Congress is considering renewal and restatement of the generalized system of preferences and other trade programs, which are, which directly benefit developing economies, as well, of course, as our own. I'd say in trade, forced labor enforcement is probably the hottest issue right now, particularly for the apparel industry. As others that are notably sourcing from the Xinjiang region in China in particular. But there are a number of other areas as well being impacted by what we call withheld relief, where goods are being stopped under suspicion of being made with forced labor, child labor, indentured servitude, et cetera. And so these measures are compelling companies to increase the visibility in their supply chains with tracing, with vendor validations. And it's the same with other customs and trade enforcement. Again, enforcement is kind of the big thing right now in trade. And, so in terms of wanting to, reopen businesses and open the doors and open the borders, we have to also be mindful that there is this increase in trade enforcement, just like there was at the beginning of the pandemic with PPE. Just because we needed it didn't mean that the FDA and customs were saying, okay, let everything in. Now there's also an increase in customs scrutiny and audits are on the rise. So the overall cost of trade compliance continues to increase, but it also creates opportunities for jobs and opportunities to increase efficiencies and find cost savings measures within the business. I think Florida businesses in particular can benefit from utilizing local resources like World Trade Center Miami, like Florida Customs Brokers and Freight Forwarders, like some of the other associations, the International Trade Consortium, that focus on trade and revenue for South Florida. And also to know that there are a number of federal and state programs that influx of monies to help support rebuilding, retooling, retraining. And of course, having access to those monies and finding the way to use them is of course critical. And I think that's where groups like World Trade Center Miami can come in and be very effective and helpful. So I think that the administration's policy on trade in particular is not necessarily helping or hurting per se, but taking the broader picture of what is the administration doing to help reopen, and then utilizing some of those to influence trade. I think some of the stats that Stephanie raised earlier were also really interesting, because I think that the connection between all of those revenue dollars that are coming in and how that's going to help growth and trade is that, you know, every hotel that gets to reopen and restaurant that gets to reopen needs materials, needs food products, needs, you know, products to sell to the tourists, and a lot of those are made overseas. So I think there's this very natural influx where we're seeing tourism and trade connect, because all the businesses are reopening and they need more product. And of course, we need to get the supply chains back running smoothly. But I think that the new U.S. Trade Representative, Katherine Tai, is very sensitive to the impact of the trade remedies, as well as the need to help increase that flow of trade. And so I know we're all working very closely with our government relations group in DC, is working very hard on getting some of these measures pushed through, whether it's through the Congress or through the administration, the USTR, to help that flow and to encourage and foster trade.
Great, thank you so much. All right, our next question is for Susan Amat. Do you think the global pandemic has dampened entrepreneurs' motivation to develop new businesses? As the world begins to reopen, do you think we will have a surge in entrepreneurship?
We're actually seeing that now everywhere, because what is the best reason to start a business when you have a problem? And a global pandemic created so many problems that people hop to it. And so in some regions of the world, it really has actually completely accelerated the new firm formation and startup formation, especially because for many of us, as I said, I was traveling all over the world, and it's very taxing, and it means you have to have some money or resources to travel to make deals. When everything shut down, everyone was at home. Every potential buyer, partner, investor. So we've actually seen some really interesting growth in investment, highest levels of investment for startups and scale-ups in the last 12 months than ever before. Now, much of that was not new form investment. It was growth investment from investors doubling down on their existing portfolios, but the money was there. They wanted to keep companies going. But what happened with earlier stage companies and people trying to solve all of these problems, especially tech-enabled companies, really pivoted well. And it was kind of shocking to me how many companies we actually were running a couple of accelerators live when the pandemic happened. So we were able to shift the program, and 100% of companies were able to pivot their offering, some to do a different type of service that was able to solve local problems immediately, but keep cash coming in. Now, those who were doing tourism and hospitality, some of them were able to shift really, really quickly to be able to do catering out to local homes, provide different types of infrastructure. So it really depended on the type of business. But what was amazing, the amount of mentoring and conversations and support that was able to be realized because we were all virtual at home. Once people kind of got over the many questions and concerns around safety and health, and we all kind of knew we just had to hunker down and this was something we were going to deal with, it ended up meaning it was shocking how readily available people were to have meetings, whereas before getting on calendars was much harder. We were able to do mentorship and different types of deployment and virtual education because people weren't waiting for that training or that workshop to start. And we were able to stay at home, schedule our lives differently, and do education engagement very, again, much more efficiently, but I think with a different level of authenticity, because as Deborah mentioned, we had people saying they were hungry for lunch or on our laps. And once you started seeing everyone as a human with a family, things got really real really quick. And you just could start remembering that we were all people again and asking about families and how are things going and asking about extended family and how are you doing instead of just being transactional and get to business. So I think that actually helped a lot of entrepreneurs be a little bit more open to make contacts, ask people for favors, network, because all of us kind of felt like we were in this global community and struggling together. And I think that's really helped move many new entrepreneurs forward faster. And again, there wasn't this, oh, let's plan for a year and figure out. Everybody just had to act now and get businesses started. And so I think we're going to actually see a lot of great value come from, you know, Beth talked about the fashion industry leapfrogging. Almost every industry had to change at its core so differently, but I think we're all going to see great benefits of that. Just an accelerated pace of expectation for how quickly new products and services can come to market because of all of us having this global learning experience together.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I have been an entrepreneur all my life. I've never really worked for another company. So it can be a wonderful place. It can be a lonely place. And as we said earlier, it's up to you to make it or break it. So it's really, you know, wonderful for me as well to see this entrepreneurial community just come together and support each other in much more of a personal way. And that's what all of this new technology and Zooming has become. We miss the networking, we miss the in-person events, but you know, there's nothing like keeping this going the way we all have. So thank you for that, Susan. You know, and our next question is for Elena. How do you think we engage more women to take up careers in international trade and business? What can we do to get more women in here?
I'd say that we already have some pretty incredible women in international trade and business. And I think that's certainly reflected by the women on the panel and by the women involved with the World Trade Center. What personally I think that sometimes is lacking is just more of an issue of visibility, right? Representation is really key because you need to see it to be it. I think this is really something that I've learned by watching my children learn to read, where they're constantly looking for themselves in the stories, right? So I think having, you know, visibility, right? Having examples to follow is important. I mean, I would love more participation, not just of business leaders, but of effective managers and supervisors, right? Opportunities to promote and include women in our industry, right? Susan mentioned, you know, a lot of this virtual training has become easier. And so that's really a great opportunity to highlight other people that can be involved. And really, I think really promoting inclusivity. I mean, I'm very grateful to the women in the trade industry that have supported and promoted me. It's been critical to my success. So I think a lot of it is making people feel welcome, right? And this opportunities for education, so we get visibility into what the jobs are. Right? There's a lot of discussion with e-commerce, and a lot of that is focused on warehousing, but there's an awful lot, right, as we can see from the different people here, to the components of international trade. So I think just, you know, more opportunities for people to see it and for people to share their experiences in a very real way where, you know, you don't just see the success, but you see a bit of, you know, what went into that process or trajectory.
Exactly, the work it had taken to get there, which brings back to what Susan Harper was saying earlier about the mentorship and the internship and mentoring programs that we are creating with the International Women's Day Committee. You know, so it's all coming around. Yeah, it's all coming around. Susan's very passionate about that, so we're going to make that happen too. And our next question is for Carolina. Carolina, as I mentioned earlier in your introduction, you have a passion for strong community involvement and the importance of creating synergy between businesses, their communities, and entrepreneurship. Since you're personally involved in many business organizations, how do you see our community working together as we emerge from the pandemic?
Well, it's more key now than ever that we all should work together, and I think we're seeing it. I mean, we are seeing, the Beacon Council with certain programs that have really engaged more other, other groups in there. You see it at the World Trade Center. We're seeing it in the Chambers of Commerce. I've always used my board positions to market my business. I become the face of the business. So instead of giving, I've done this from the very beginning. For 28 years, I had my own, private business of centers. We supported a lot of the communities we lived in. And I thought that was the best way of marketing my company and me, because it's that relationship building. And that's what our networking does with our community. I mean, so if we're involved in the World Trade Center, so let's just say we have the airport there, the port there, we have the consul generals there, we have trade logistics. So, that's a whole group you're talking to that you probably would never get an opportunity to, but they recognize your face. The Chamber of Commerce the same way, and definitely, the Beacon Council, the Greater Miami Chamber, all of those play a huge part. OWIT, that I'm the local chapter president of. We really get our voice out this way for our businesses, but also for our community, because we want a community, at least I do, and I think all of us in general want this, that it's a community that we help build that will make our businesses thrive. I mean, that's the complete circle for me, is like, I give to the community, I support these organizations, and in turn, I hope at some point people will know about us, will, use our services, and will, refer us. So that's.
There you go. It's all about networking within your community.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay, and our next question is for Deborah Stern. Deborah, since your core business is helping your clients succeed in international trade, what paths do you foresee within global trade being the most accessible for women to enter or return to the workforce?
Thanks. I think, the transparency and visibility to the opportunities and to the jobs that Elena mentioned is really critical. There are actually needs in trade jobs. I think the challenge that many face is the need or the preference that there be experienced individuals. So a lot of companies are looking, but they're preferring experienced individuals. And if you don't have that experience, how do you get that experience? It's that, age-old chicken and egg. And as we learn to do more with less, as the pandemic has taught us all, it is hard to take the time to train. But ultimately, I think the pains of training do yield the long-term benefits. You actually have somebody who's trained in the way you want things done and the way your business needs them done, rather than someone coming in with their bad habits, right? But it is still a big challenge in I think every industry. But I know that there are a number of opportunities within customs brokerage, freight forwarding, trade finance, trade consulting, both business strategic consulting as well as trade compliance, like what I do, supply chain and logistics. In fact, there are a number of programs, though, to help alleviate some of the pains of training through, for example, there are programs now at Miami-Dade College and FIU. The Florida Customs Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association launched its Trade Academy and also has always had a robust set of educational programs throughout the year. Trade firms like mine, we do a number of webinars that are really about training on how to do different areas. World Trade Center Miami as well, a great resource. OWIT, another great resource. I think that it's important to, and I think Susan mentioned this, not just about the work from home realities that allow us to be more engaged and to do more training. But since, again, we need people who have an understanding and we need visibility to those jobs, you have, this beautiful thing called the internet right in front of you to allow you to find those opportunities. But you also need, I think, and in particular for women who are trying to juggle it all and just seem so overwhelmed. Don't get me wrong, I know there are a number of men who are in the same boat. But I think our brains tend to try to want to do it all at once. And I know that's always a challenge and a conflict my husband and I have. Why don't you just do this the easier way? I don't know. But again, it's not the easiest time to reinvent yourself, but knowing that there are opportunities out there, and knowing that there are educational opportunities to help you find that fit between the job and the training that you need, I think is critical. And, even if you can't reinvent yourself entirely into a new career, persevering, being resilient, not being discouraged by no, using your resources, building your contacts, using your support system, whatever it consists of, to go out and find those opportunities or take that time for training, even if you're doing an online course at 2 a.m, because, the kids wouldn't go to bed on time, and employ effective networking strategies, being willing to find the path less traveled, or maybe just less obvious. Again, this kind of brings me back to that transparency and visibility of the opportunities that are out there. You've got to go look for them. They're not just going to come to you necessarily, but there are ways to find them again. And I think that through this interpersonal network, and that's where, again, organizations like OWIT, I'm a past president of that as well, are phenomenal avenues for women in particular to help other women find those jobs and find, those kind of path less traveled. In fact, when I was in school, I was studying international law, whatever that meant. And I learned very quickly that there are so many subsets of international law. I just knew I needed to be in that environment. I had done a study abroad program and just fell in love with being somewhere else and learning new things in different cultures and et cetera. And that was kind of my path. But I ended up at US Customs. How? I hadn't even thought about US Customs, but it was through a series of networkings that I had done that landed me in that space. And I was like, wait a minute, this is international trade. This is, this is kind of where I want to be. So I think, for women in particular, there are a number of opportunities. The field isn't carved out. It's not as male dominated as it used to be. And just knowing who to go to and how to find the answers, and relying on those contacts. Ask for help. Bottom line, ask for help.
There you go. It sounds like tenacity, networking, a vision for the future, and just the will to survive. That's what we've all been going through. Great answers, everyone. Thank you so much for this. And now I believe, Ivan, we're going to take some Q&A from the audience.
Hi, Beth. So I've gotten a few questions. One of them was for everyone on the panel, and it was just someone asking, as everything begins to come back online, what are all of you looking most forward to in your businesses?
I'll start a break. As I said, everyone else is going to go with everything's ramping up. I'm looking forward to slowing down a little bit. I don't mean that to brag, by the way. It's been exhausting and I just need a break.
At least you're honest. Okay, who wants to take it next? Somebody. Carolina.
I'm looking forward to seeing people in person. The post.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I miss the relationship, contact face to face, even though this has been great and it's really been good, but really getting in front of people again, I think is important, and getting that camaraderie back again.
I would second that. We're, doing more training at FCBF, and we finally just started having the hybrid of people in the room and online, and it's a very different feel. It's very nice.
Susan, Ahmad?
I'm looking forward to my dog not barking when I'm on calls. So being in the office more, and I'm just kidding. So I think the main thing is going to be just having people make choices based on what's best for their companies and families, instead of needing to go do something. So I love being in person with people, and I've been having lunches for a while. Live and eating food and then us eating online. But at the same time, I really love being home with my family. And I can't believe I missed 2.5, 3 years of the normal driving to school and those kind of things. So as far as, getting back, I miss spending time with my team. And of course, I love traveling so much. But at the same time, I'm really glad that we're now at a place where people are not intimidated by technology and they're making decisions for their businesses, not based on, oh, I don't know how it'll be adopted and my people are too comfortable with X.
Yeah.
I think the fact that all of us are now so much more comfortable with technology, and the fact is that you can get to a pretty good level. Elena, I think it's awesome you are doing hybrid training. You can get to the level of all live training with hybrid really easily. And if you have the right trainers, you can get to that level with all virtual. The thing for me has been, I would much rather have 10,000 people be trained for the same price as it costs to have the 50 great people be trained. And I think that's, especially in the emerging markets and some of the other areas we work in, when you get a chance to see how hungry and excited people are for getting access to education that they haven't gotten before because it was just cost prohibitive. So again, Beth, I'm sure I did not answer the question properly, but hopefully that's helpful.
It was. And Susan Harper, let's hear from you. Wait.
Famous unmute. I have to say that I've lived my whole life as a first-generation Canadian and daughter of an American. I've lived my whole life able to cross the border. And much as I love my American friends and family, I am so much looking forward to being able to go home, see my family.
Exactly. So I think the consensus is this has all been great. We've pivoted and we've learned to continue with our lives and businesses this way. We're all looking forward to getting back into, the groove and seeing everybody, and I really think that it's going to be a different mentality when we do get back in the room again. I think that people are just going to be a little bit softer, a little bit kinder, a little bit more gentle, and just happy that we all survived this and we're still here and moving forward. At least that's my hope, and that's what I feel. So Alice, do we have some more questions?
Yes, so we do have one on the Q&A, and the question is, with all the people coming to Miami from Latin America to get vaccinated, I would be curious to know if any of the panelists know how the health tourism is impacting Miami's economy. And I know we lost our tourism speaker, but and we can take that separately, but if anyone wants to answer that.
Susan Amat's ready.
Yeah, and so I'm very proud to be working with Mayor Daniela Levine Cava on the Renew 305 initiative. And so there's a lot planned under that with a special focus on tourism, on the tourism and hospitality sector there. So the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Greater Miami Hotels Association, I'm sorry, I forget all the letters all over the place, but there's a huge uptick. And the fact is that it's not just foreigners coming to get vaccinated, but people from all over the country too. So I think that that's been great for our community, just to have faces and humans visiting again. And everything is rebounding really, really well. But I think the larger piece is conferences are now open. We're going to be hosting a major Bitcoin conference in a week and a half, 2 weeks, that is really setting us apart on an international stage for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, despite some of the challenges the area has been having lately. So I think there is this movement. So the vaccinations are great, and let's welcome everyone with open arms. But on top of that, there are meetings happening. There are conventions starting. I know that the wonderful food conference that the World Trade Center Miami puts on, where all of us gain 5 pounds with samples, we're all looking forward to that happening live again, right? You know what? I'm going to amend my earlier answer. I'm looking forward to samples at conferences, because I have missed having opportunities for those kind of things. There's no more sample restaurants. So I'm looking forward to sampling again.
Yeah. And I just heard the buffets are coming back soon too.
So we have additional questions. I guess this is for everyone. What lessons has the pandemic taught us that we can use as business owners in a post-shutdown economy to be more stronger than before?
You'd like to start? Elena.
Oh, gosh, I think that I'm going to go into all of my dealings, right, and everything with a little bit more awareness and gratitude, right? And Deb had mentioned, like the chaos of this, of being a mom with little kids has certainly, shown you how hard you have to work at that balance. But I think more than ever, being careful with our business, right? Refocusing on some of, looking at our transactional process, our, how we take care of our clients, I think, and, how we protect our business going forward, I think, it's pretty salient for me now.
There you go. Who's next? Carolina.
I agree there on that one. I think people are going to be, like you mentioned earlier, Beth, I think we're looking at a kinder workforce coming back out. I think our meetings will be different, but I think they'll be easier to handle. But I also feel that it's an opportunity that we were able to shine, not only as women, but in being able to pivot the way we did and not miss a beat on anything. It was hard, but we did it, and I think that is a big kudos to us. But I also hope that employers see that as a plus, okay, and not as a minus to just dump more on us because we can do it. I think it's important that they see that we are capable of pivoting. We are capable of handling under hard circumstances, like with the children or even with the elderly parents. That hasn't been mentioned, but a lot of people had to deal with their elderly parents at home. So I think that's important. And I think an employer may be looking at the whole picture differently too.
I agree. Deb, you got something you wanted to say?
Oh, I was just saying, waving the hand, the sandwich generation, I'm dealing with parent issues as well. And yeah, I think that the flexibility that businesses have recognized, and I think I had mentioned this before, so I wasn't going to jump back in again, but while I'm here, the flexibility that business owners have seen is, not only can we do more with less, but we can do it from home if we have to, and allowing for that flexibility, and maybe not 5 or 7 days a week at home, but a flex type of program for businesses that didn't think they could do it before. Again, it allows you to expand your workforce in ways that you didn't imagine. And I think, again, I mirror everyone else's sentiments as well on that.
Excellent. Susan Amat, do you have something you'd like to add?
Well, I think the big change for many people is just going to be taking little experiments and trying things and knowing that your culture can sustain it. I think of many companies that we worked with, even, what seemed like technology companies and their investors were very focused on the plan. And when everything is chaos from one day to the next, and you can not only survive, but thrive without a formal plan in place and just trying little things until, and the difference in communication and trust and kind of getting through it together, I think that we're going to see a lot more experimentation in companies of all sizes, because they realize that the pace and getting things going faster and for less is doable. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like. It's been hard for many to be comfortable with that level of change, but because everybody did, for the companies that have learned how to do it well, I think it's going to be part of their culture from here on out. And echoing the conversation around virtual employees, we've been able to, all of our hires for a while have had the chance to be hybrid or remote, but now we're actively hiring people from the other side of the world because it just makes our business better. And so I think that that's going to help with the diversity and perspectives to build better products and better companies for the future. So I think that including the flex time pieces that may allow Sandwich Generation and others to be able, and students to be able to find ways to continue education and keeping priorities in their life how they are while still having meaningful employment. So I think all of those things are going to make for better, more resilient companies and society.
Excellent. Susan Harper, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, thank you for asking me to join this esteemed panel for a minute. I've been struck by 3 huge impacts on how we work, and how we're living: the health impacts, the remote work impacts, and a lot of the impacts from frankly, the Floyd killing and other issues, which have led us to question many things about how we are working and how we are living. And I'm finding, that's a lot of big change hitting our organizations all at the same time. And, as people have been saying here, change gives you lots of opportunities. It also increases the stress a lot in the interpersonal, and as people are getting sick or having to deal with some of these things. So I think that there is a lot of change going on. And even if now in Miami, you can certainly see the pivot to, in-person meetings, in-person events, et cetera. I think all 3 of those things are going to still have an impact on us, but on the rest of the world for some time to come. And I think that there are going to be new ways of working, new ways of business travel, new concerns about health and safety too. So I just think that there are huge changes affecting people, and I'm seeing it as people are now coming out, because in person you can have those conversations in ways you can't usually have them on a Zoom call.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So thank you for being the conclusion. This is the conclusion of our program. Thank you all for being here with us today. And I'd like to give a special thanks again to all the honorees for participating in our webinar, to Susan Harper, our Consul General of Canada, Inez Calderon, President of Calderon and Associates, for your continued help and support of our annual International Women's Day event, and to the staff of the World Trade Center Miami, Ivan Barrios and Alice Acuna, for their dedication and leadership in continuing to develop the World Trade Center Miami into a top global organization. In September, we will begin accepting nominations for the 2022 International Women's Day Award. So please be on the lookout for an email from the World Trade Center Miami announcing the nomination process. Thank you for joining us today. Stay safe and be well.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.